Welcome back, guys, to another discussion style video here. At the moment, there's not a whole lot of interesting topics to really go over in the video game industry. And most of you really seem to enjoy the last Castlevania video I did with the tier list, so let's do Resident Evil this time. That way, half of you can agree with me and the other half can get mad at me. Oh, and I'm sure that some of you are going to have issues with some of my choices here. We're going to go ahead and rank all the Resident Evil games. The mainline ones and the big side games. There's some really weird ones out there, like old Java mobile phone games. Let's focus on the ones you can play on console and portable game systems. But real quick before we get started, I do want to give a quick shout out to all my Patreon members for their continued support. You guys help make this channel possible and you contribute to keeping these videos flowing. If you want to have your name up here too, gain exclusive benefits like sneak peeks, progress updates, behind the scenes, access to the Discord exclusive channel, and early access to my big videos, go to patreon.com/GamerThumbTV or click the link on the description to get started. Alright, tier list. Let's get this thing going here. I think this is a pretty complete list. I went through it. I mean, we even have Gun Survivor 2 and like Umbrella Corps on here. So, I mean, this is, I think, a complete list. Again, I understand there's all kinds of weird little side things that came out. This is the main stuff right here. Let's go ahead and piss some people off right at the beginning. Resident Evil Survivor. Anyone want to guess where this is going to go? If you've been on any of my streams and you don't know where I'm going to put this right now, I'm very disappointed in you. Resident Evil Survivor, I'm not even kidding. I'm putting that game in S rank. I love Resident Evil Survivor unapologetically. Think about it. It's not a game that takes a really long time to beat. You're not going to sit there for 20 hours trying to get all the collectibles and go from point A to B to C to D. You can beat the game in like an hour or two. And then you can go back and play it again and get a different path. And then play it a third time and get another path. Now, the only thing... Hang on. Let me take a step back real quick. Let me knock it down one. I'm only doing this for one reason. No light gun support in the US. This game was intended as a full-blown light gun game. In other regions, it was released playable with a light gun. In the US, you cannot use a light gun. You have to use the PS1 controller. So with great sadness, I will move that down from S to A rank. That should please some of you that want to see it down here. Not happening. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, let's go ahead and pick a shitty game. Let's see. Normally, I'd say it's really hard to pick a shitty game for Resident Evil, but I mean, I mean, right here. RE-verse. I don't even know what to say about this game. It's just a really crappy, generic, competitive multiplayer deathmatch style game. It's not good. That's all I have to say about the game. It's dreadful. We might as well put, you know what, let's knock these out real quick. Let's put Umbrella Corps right next to it. Because Umbrella Corps is a piece of garbage, too. I'll say this. It functions as a third-person shooter. As in, you can aim the left trigger and then push the right trigger to shoot. And sometimes you hit your target. Like, it's a functional game. But that doesn't mean it's any good. The one interesting thing about this game is that story-wise, it does go into some of the backdrop of what's happening after Umbrella with other corporations being involved with all their leftovers, but I mean, it's minimal. On that same vein, let's put Resident Evil Resistance. Technically, I think gameplay-wise, this one's a little better, but just Resident Evil multiplayer stinks. We just don't need it. It's the kind of game where you just need single player, really. If you're going to do online multiplayer, do co-op, like Resident Evil 5 and 6 kind of thing. We got RE-verse and Umbrella Corps, which is competitive. Resistance is like an online co-op kind of thing, but it doesn't have a campaign. It stinks. All these are stinkers. Don't worry about playing them. Resident Evil Gun Survivor 2, you know what? I actually don't know where to place this one. I think this is the only one on the list I haven't played. It never got a US release. And I know it's supposed to be like a reenactment of Code Veronica. We'll leave this one down here. Actually, you know what? There's going to be two we're going to leave off the list. We're going to leave Resident Evil Mercenaries down here because Resident Evil Mercenaries is fantastic. I don't really count it as a Resident Evil game, though. It's really just the Mercenaries game mode, but just packaged in its own game. So I'm not going to count that one as a full Resident Evil game. Gun Survivor 2, I haven't played it. I don't know. Let's move the mouse and grab a random one. Oh, Resident Evil 2 Remake. Oh, man. Where am I going to put Resident Evil 2 Remake? S rank, baby. Resident Evil 2 Remake is awesome. From the very first time I saw Resident Evil 2, the first footage, it was so mind-blowing. It was so mind-blowingly good. Yeah, it's got its critiques of the game. It does change some things around from the original one. Mostly with the A and B campaign. Now it's a first and second run. But that one started the whole trend of these RE remakes that we're still getting to this day. So I got to put that in S rank. That game's legendary. Having said that, where would we put Resident Evil 3 Remake? I would put that one in A because it is very good. On the downside, it is a little bit shorter. Again, this is assuming you're just playing the campaign one time and not trying to do everything. I think it does do some improvements over the original. I have heard some complaints from people that Nemesis doesn't seem as threatening. I don't know what game they played in the original. Most of the game, you just walk right by the Nemesis and he's gone. I think he's genuinely more threatening in this one. The reason I don't put it right next to RE2 Remake is the cut content. I think some of it is fine. Like the park area, that area was boring. Why do people pretend like they liked that part in the original game? It was a boring section. I don't care if they cut it out. But they did cut out the boss fight with the Gravedigger. To me, cutting out any boss fights is a crime. You want all the boss fights at least. So that demotes it. Resident Evil 2 Classic. I mean, that's S rank for sure. I don't think anyone will debate me on that one. If you disagree on that one, please leave me a comment and explain why. Resident Evil 2's... that is the game that got me into both Resident Evil and the PlayStation. I didn't play RE2 original on the PlayStation when it first came out. I was a diehard N64 fanboy. And then when Resident Evil 2 on N64 came out, I played it and I was like, oh my god, this is a PlayStation game? Because of that, I got Resident Evil 3 and then 1, and then I was a fan forever. And that's the reason I ended up with a PlayStation. Well, one of the main reasons. I might not be here talking about Resident Evil today had it not been for the original Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil Gaiden. Let's go with C rank. Resident Evil Gaiden is a Game Boy Color spin-off, showing what Leon was doing after Resident Evil 2. You're on a cruise ship, and it's an over-the-head view like Zelda. It's not a horrible game, so we're not going to put it in D, but it is very clunky. The combat's really cool. When you're fighting the zombies, it goes like this first-person mode, and there's like a meter going left and right, and you have to hit it right in the middle to shoot the zombies. So the battle mechanics are fun. My problem with that game, everything looks the same, and there's no sense of direction. You'll play this game, you're going to be lost without a guide, having no clue at all what to do. So it's a really hard game to get through, and there's a lot of repetition in the story, but it's really cool seeing Leon and Barry together in a game. That one's a C. Not very good, but not horrible either. We need a B. What's a B? Something below Resident Evil 3 Remake and Survivor. We're going to put Resident Evil Dead Aim as a B, because that game is super cool on the PS2. If you're playing it without a light gun, it's definitely a C. The controls suck. And the story's okay. The main character's just weird. Like Bruce, he's got this weird long neck. I just don't find any of the characters in this game that likable. The bad guy is basically Sephiroth from Final Fantasy. If you're playing with a light gun, though, let's put that in a B. But that doesn't make sense. I knocked down Resident Evil Survivor because it has no light gun support. But I have Dead Aim as a B with light gun support. Whatever, I'm a hypocrite. We're going to keep it at B. Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. Oh, I'm going to get so much shit for this in the comments. Let me go back to me a couple of years ago. I would have put it as A rank because I love anything Raccoon City. Just the Raccoon City event was so huge to the Resident Evil universe. Like, it was the peak of storytelling in Resident Evil. Never been reached again. But I did play it all the way through on co-op with a full party. It was a blast. It was so much fun. So I went back and streamed it, and it's rough. It's rough. If you play this game on the hardest difficulty, on single player, it's just not good. You're going to run out of ammo constantly fighting the big bosses, and then you're going to stand around not knowing what to do because you can't progress forward. It's a very messy game. So a couple of years ago, I would have said A. But I think if it's going to be an online co-op game, you have to be able to play it on single player also and have a good time with it. Oh, I'm going to get shit for that. C. It's a C. Let's put it somewhere here between. No, it's a C. It's a C. God damn it. My stream ruined it for me. Let's put Resident Evil 4 as an A. I mean, let's be real. The game's amazing. I've never quite thought it was an S rank, though. Because think about it from the point in time we were at, right? We had just come off, what was it, Code Veronica, story-wise, chronologically speaking, where we destroyed Umbrella's Antarctic base. We're ready to take down the company. What's next? Where are we going? What Umbrella facility are we hitting next time? And then you buy Resident Evil 4, and at the beginning, they're like, hey, Umbrella's gone. No T-Virus, here's some other monsters. I was like, what? What happened in between? Having said that, the game's amazing. It's just a really good game. I don't even think I need to explain why. If you play Resident Evil 4, I mean, there's a reason. It started off as a GameCube exclusive and then ended up on everything else and is still getting re-released and supported. Resident Evil 4 is A. Only reason I don't put it in S rank, besides the ones I've already explained, is because we got Resident Evil 4 Remake. I think it's a better game. They took an already great game and made it better, so I can't put them on equal ground. One of the biggest improvements is the whole Operation Ada side thing. In the original was super boring. I've never liked it. They made it good in Resident Evil 4 Remake. If you make an A game an A+, you are an S rank. Dead Aim looks really lonely there. We need another B in here. What would I legitimately put as a B? Let's put both Outbreak and Outbreak File Number 2. I'm going to get shit for this too. I don't know why. People love the Outbreak games. I've never liked to play them. They're good, story-wise. Here's some other survivors. This is what they were doing. There's all this other stuff going on in Raccoon City. It was the early days of online, so the online wasn't really great like it would be today. These games need a remake. If these games got a remake now, Outbreak File Number 1 and 2, as one package called Resident Evil Outbreak Remake, and they were just as good as those S ranks up there, it'd be mind-blowing. They need it desperately. But it's one of those games where I don't hate it, but I hate playing through them. There's one specific element of these games that I absolutely hate. You're timed. The whole game is timed. You might not see a clock, but you have a little virus meter that's slowly filling up. You could slow it down. You could stop it temporarily, but it's there the whole time harassing you. I hate that. When I play a video game, I want to sit there and explore everything and take my time. I don't want to feel like I'm rushed. Especially if you're playing through levels the first time and you have no idea where these items are, and then you realize one of your AI buddies, like a mile away, has it in their inventory. B, and I know some of you put those up there in S rank. People love these. I don't know why. You know, for a similar reason, I'd probably put Resident Evil 0 here in B. Resident Evil 0 works really well as a prequel. I like it a lot. Graphically, I mean, it really took advantage of the GameCube's power. It looks really good. It plays really well from a gameplay perspective. But again, it's one of those games that I recognize that it's good. I recognize that it's well designed, but I hate playing through it. Out of all these on the list, doesn't matter what difficulty you're playing on, Resident Evil 0 is the hardest game. I hate the inventory system that they did. I hate having to share inventory between two characters that are in two different spots. You could end up in one area, not realize that your characters are going to get separated story-wise, and then realize one of your important items is with the other character. It's frustrating. And it's not fun. If you're getting into the series, you should play it, but not right away. It might be the first one out of all these chronologically, but you do not want to play this one first, or it's going to frustrate you, and you're not going to want to play the rest of the series. I like it. I hate playing through it. Umbrella Chronicles. Let's put Umbrella Chronicles and Darkside Chronicles together, because I feel the same way about those. We're going to put both of them in A rank. Those were two games that came out on the Wii originally, and then got PS3 ports. They are nowhere near as good as these S ranks up here. But I love rail shooters. I grew up in the arcades in the 90s playing House of the Dead and those kind of games. So any good light gun game, I appreciate. The Wii versions, I would put a B. But they came out on the PS3 and they work with the Move controllers and the Move guns. Way better tracking, way more accurate, way more responsive. Those games need VR remakes with the PS aim gun. I would buy them in a heartbeat. They're very fun to play, and they fill in a lot of the backstory of what Wesker was doing in between games, what Leon was doing before Resident Evil 4, between Resident Evil 2 and 4. Operation Javier, which they made super canon in Resident Evil 4 Remake. They talk about it, so that it's essential storytelling. It's there. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. As is, I will put it in A. I'm going to put it in S rank in VR mode. So, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard VR. I always found it funny how people think it's not Resident Evil. You're in a spooky house with very limited resources. At its core, that's Resident Evil, how it started. And keep in mind, Resident Evil is always intended to be an FPS at first. It puts you in the shoes of someone that's not a S.T.A.R.S member. You're not a badass USS soldier. You're just a guy called Ethan. And you end up in a murder house. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's scary. In VR, this game feels like you're in there. It's a horrifying experience. Playing this game in VR versus non-VR, night and day difference. S rank, Resident Evil 7 VR. Fuck it, I'm putting Village right there too. Everything I said about Resident Evil 7 VR, I'm saying also about Village. I'll say this, Village isn't as scary. It's not. It's got its moments, but it's still a really great game to play through. It makes the character of Ethan Winters, which a lot of people didn't care about in 7, it made him a beloved Resident Evil character. Like, it really improved his story. And aside from VR mode, they added a Mercenaries mode back. They also added a third-person view. So you can choose between first person and third person and replay it. It feels different. The original Resident Evil. We'll put it in A. I'm not going to put Resident Evil on S just because it was the first one. It's very good, but it's where it all started. It popularized survival horror for home consoles. Although it wasn't the first, there were other survival horror games, but this is the one where the genre exploded. The great things about it, though, the cheesy voice acting, the old black and white censored footage at the beginning with live actors, it's so good. But I cannot put it in S rank when Resident Evil 1 Remake exists. Again, this is, I'm going to say exactly what I said about RE4. They took an already great game and made it better. Just everything about the gameplay and the game design and the characters, everything was improved in Resident Evil Remake. That's a no-brainer. And this game looks so good that it still holds up as a modern game by 2024 standards. A game that was made for the GameCube originally. This game pushed the limits of the GameCube like crazy. Code Veronica, S rank. I love Code Veronica. It was technically the real Resident Evil 3, because if you play Resident Evil 3, it's not really a sequel to 2. It takes place before and after, but it's the same event, the Raccoon City outbreak. Resident Evil Code Veronica X pushed the story forward with Chris, Claire, Wesker. There's new virus of T. Veronica, new villains. It felt so big, too, because you have a whole game practically on Rockford Island, and then you go to Antarctica, and it's a whole nother part that could be its own game. Still waiting on it to get a remake. I think it's inevitable that it'll get one. I gotta move this. We got too many good games here. I gotta move the webcam. Resident Evil 5. That's right, too. I love Resident Evil 5 because of the online co-op. You gotta remember, when this came out, we've never had an online co-op Resident Evil game where you could play the whole campaign with a friend from beginning to end. It's so fun. Where the game really fails is if you're playing on single player on the hardest difficulty. The Sheva AI it screws you. You got to take away all her first aid sprays, all her weapons. You take it away. Take it away and let her fend for herself. But on co-op, that game is a masterpiece. I really liked it. And then, of course, you bring back Chris Redfield, one of the original characters from the series. Resident Evil 6, on the other hand, I know people hate on this game a lot. People want to put it down here in D. I wouldn't go that far at all, because Resident Evil 6 is not a bad game. It's like Michael Bay's Resident Evil. It's not scary. It's just a ridiculous action-packed game. But what's cool about it, again, the online co-op returns, that's a huge factor for me that I enjoy on it. But each campaign feels differently. The Ada campaign I thought was horribly boring. It's just a repeat of all the other areas you've been to from a different point of view. The Jake and Sherry one I thought was alright, but I love the Chris and Leon campaign. So the game is really long. It's nowhere near as good as Resident Evil 5, but it's not horrible by any means. We'll put it on B. It does run a little too long, and it's got one whole campaign that I just don't enjoy. So I can't possibly put it up here next to these others. Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. We're going to put that one in S rank, because it's one of those legendary PS1 games, although it did get re-releases later on other consoles, but that one is a staple of the PS1 console. If you have a PS1, you have to have this game, just like Resident Evil 2. And what I really liked about it is how different it felt from Resident Evil 2. Yeah, you're in Raccoon City, there's plenty of reused assets, but it's a lot more action-oriented, but still holds that fear factor. And then Nemesis was scary as hell back then. He would just pop up. Although once you play the game enough, you know you can just run by him and go to the next door and eventually he'll go away. But put yourself back in your younger shoes playing this game for the first time. It was horrifying. The Revelations games, where are we putting those? Because those are awesome. You know what? Let's start with the first one. Revelations 1 brought back Jill finally after missing in action for quite a while. That one really impressed me originally because it was a 3DS game. And then, of course, later I had to rebuy it when they released the HD ports on consoles. But that was originally a 3DS game, and it was an impressive feat. Playing it, it felt like you were playing a console experience. And you know what? It does nothing new. It's typical Resident Evil fare. New bad guy, new virus, brings back legacy characters. And Revelations 2 I struggle with a little because, you know what? Let's put it in B. I'm going to put it just a step below Revelations. I want to reiterate that Revelations 2 is an awesome game, but I do like the first one better. And maybe I'm a little biased. I like the Chris and Jill stuff. Claire, I've never found Claire as interesting, so you focus a lot on her and the little girl. And Barry, the fact that Barry's back is amazing. And then you have a new evil Wesker. Will really turn me off from this game, and maybe it's not fair that I dock it a couple points, but I have to, because it did affect my opinion back then. Now you could buy this game in one package, and you're good. Back then, it was one of those episodic games where you had episode 1 and then episode 2, and then you had to wait for them to finish releasing the game, and it really killed my excitement for it. So the release schedule for that game really hurt it, in my opinion. I remember by the time the final chapter came out, I didn't even care anymore, and I had to force myself to play through it. Now, when I did play through it, I really liked it. Also, the add-on content, I don't think it's very good. I think it's super boring. So we're going to keep that one at a B. I think that's fair. I think A is a better package as a Resident Evil game, although I still think you should play that one. Again, if you get a test grade, B is still a good score. Oh, we're done. That is it. Again, these two, Gun Survivor 2, I've never actually played. Resident Evil Mercenaries 3D, it's Mercenaries mode. You know what? Here, A, Mercenaries mode is fun. To summarize the list, at the bottom of the barrel, we got RE-verse, Umbrella Corps, Resident Evil Resistance. This goes in the garbage, much like Umbrella throws away all their leftover trash. Down to the dump, ready to infect the city. Gross. Under C, we've got Resident Evil Gaiden and Operation Raccoon City, and no one's allowed to bring this video up on stream when I talk about Raccoon City. And then we got the Bs, the games that are good. We got Resident Evil Dead Aim, only when using the light gun. Resident Evil Outbreak 1 and 2, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 6, and Revelations 2. Then we've got the A rank, the games that are great. You got Resident Evil Survivor, I stand by that. Resident Evil 3 Remake, Resident Evil 4, Umbrella Chronicles and Darkside Chronicles, awesome light gun shooters. Then we got the original Revelations, and yeah, sure, Mercenaries. But then we've got the S rank. These are the legendary Resident Evil games. These are the ones that are pure Resident Evil. It's what makes the franchise what it is. Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 2 Classic, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Biohazard, yes, it is pure Resident Evil. Village, Resident Evil Remake, Code Veronica X, Resident Evil 5, and Nemesis. That's my ranking. That's the video. Let me know in the comments if you disagree, or if you're mad at me for the list, let me know where you disagree. And don't forget to tell me why Resident Evil Survivor is your favorite. Catch you guys later.